You're trash.
Bullies humiliated the new kid in front of the whole school. Big mistake. He got brutal revenge. Marcus Rivera stood at the entrance of Westfield High School, his worn backpack slung over his shoulder as students streamed past him in chattering groups. At 17, Marcus was average height but lean, with dark hair that fell slightly over his eyes and a quiet demeanor that made him seem almost invisible. He preferred it that way. After moving to this new town with his single mother following another job transfer, Marcus had learned that staying unnoticed was often the safest approach. The hallways buzzed with the energy of students who had known each other for years, their conversations flowing easily as they navigated between classes. Marcus kept his head down, studying his schedule and trying to memorize the layout of the building. He had hoped this school might be different, that maybe he could finally settle somewhere long enough to make real friends. That hope lasted exactly 3 periods. During lunch, Marcus entered the cafeteria carrying his brown bag lunch, scanning for an empty table where he could eat in peace. The room was divided into clear social territories, athletes at the large tables near the windows, popular students in the center, and various smaller groups scattered throughout. Marcus spotted an empty table in the corner and made his way toward it. "Well, well, what do we have here?" The voice came from behind him, dripping with mock curiosity. Marcus turned to see 3 students approaching. The leader was a stocky boy with bleached blonde hair and arms that clearly spent time in the weight room. His Letterman jacket marked him as part of the football team, and his confident smirk suggested he was used to getting his way. "I'm Tyler Morrison," the boy announced, extending his hand as if offering friendship. "Haven't seen you around before." Marcus hesitated before shaking the offered hand. "Marcus Rivera, just transferred here." Tyler's grip tightened unnecessarily, and Marcus could feel the deliberate pressure meant to intimidate. Behind Tyler stood 2 other boys, one tall and lanky with dirty brown hair named Jake, and another shorter but muscular kid called Brett, who seemed eager to follow Tyler's lead. "Rivera, huh?" Tyler released Marcus's hand with a slight shove. "Let me guess. Another immigrant family looking for handouts?" The comment hit like a slap, but Marcus kept his expression neutral. He had dealt with ignorant comments before and learned that reacting usually made things worse. "Actually, my mom's a nurse. She got transferred here for work." "Oh, how noble," Tyler said with exaggerated sympathy. "Well, Rivera, let me give you some free advice about how things work here at Westfield." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Some tables are reserved for people who matter. That one you were heading to? That's where we usually sit our equipment." Jake and Brett snickered behind their leader, clearly enjoying the show. Marcus glanced around the cafeteria and noticed other students watching the interaction with a mixture of curiosity and relief that they weren't the target. "I understand," Marcus said quietly, picking up his lunch. "I'll find somewhere else." "Good boy," Tyler said with a condescending pat on Marcus's shoulder. "I think we're going to get along just fine." Marcus found an empty table near the back of the cafeteria, closer to the lunch line where students constantly moved past. As he unwrapped his sandwich, he could feel Tyler's group watching him from across the room, already planning their next move. The pattern established itself quickly over the following days. Tyler Morrison had apparently decided that Marcus Rivera would be his new source of entertainment. It started small, accidentally bumping into Marcus in the hallways hard enough to knock his books out of his hands, making loud comments about illegal immigrants when Marcus was within earshot, and encouraging other students to avoid the weird new kid. Marcus endured it all with quiet resignation. What Tyler and his followers didn't know was that Marcus had attended 6 different schools in the past 4 years due to his mother's job transfers. He had learned that fighting back usually made the bullying worse and followed him for the rest of his time at each school. It was easier to keep his head down, do his work, and hope his mother's job would be stable long enough for him to graduate. but Tyler Morrison was more persistent than the bullies Marcus had encountered before. During gym class, Coach Peterson divided the students into teams for basketball. Marcus wasn't particularly athletic, but he could hold his own. When Tyler ended up on the opposing team, Marcus knew it wouldn't end well. "Let's see what the new kid's got," Tyler announced loud enough for everyone to hear. The game progressed normally for the first few minutes, with Marcus staying on the periphery and avoiding direct confrontation. But when he intercepted a pass intended for Tyler, everything changed. Tyler charged at Marcus with unnecessary force, slamming into him and sending both of them crashing to the floor. The impact knocked the wind out of Marcus, and he lay on the gym floor gasping while Tyler stood over him. "Oops," Tyler said with mock concern. "Sorry, Rivera. Guess you're not quite ready for varsity-level play." Coach Peterson blew his whistle. "Morrison, take it easy out there. Rivera, you okay?" Marcus nodded, pushing himself up despite the throbbing pain in his ribs. He caught Tyler's satisfied smirk and felt something dark stir in his chest. Not anger at Tyler, but frustration at his own helplessness. What Tyler didn't know was that Marcus Rivera wasn't helpless at all. For the past 8 years, since he was 9 years old, Marcus had been training in mixed martial arts. His mother, Elena Rivera, had enrolled him in classes after they moved to their second city, and Marcus came home with a black eye from neighborhood bullies. She worked extra shifts at the hospital to pay for the training, believing that her son needed to know how to defend himself in a world that often targeted people like them. Marcus had excelled at the training, showing natural talent for both striking and grappling techniques. His instructors praised his discipline and control, noting that he never used his skills to start fights or show off. By the time he was 15, Marcus had won several local tournaments and caught the attention of regional coaches who wanted to train him for national competitions. But Marcus had made a promise to his mother and to himself. He would only use his skills in true self-defense when there was no other option. He had seen too many kids his age get expelled, arrested, or worse for fighting at school. His mother sacrificed too much for his education for him to throw it away over bullies who would eventually move on to easier targets. So Marcus endured Tyler's escalating harassment with the patience of someone who knew he could end it at any time, but chose not to. He absorbed the accidental shoves, the mocking comments about his heritage, and the deliberate attempts to humiliate him in front of other students. The breaking point came 3 weeks after Marcus's first day at Westfield High. It was a Friday afternoon, and Marcus was leaving his last class when he realized he had forgotten his textbook. He returned to the empty classroom to retrieve it, planning to spend the weekend catching up on reading. As he walked back through the hallway toward the exit, he heard voices coming from around the corner. "I'm telling you, he won't fight back," Tyler's voice carried clearly in the empty corridor. "The kid's a complete coward. Watch this." Marcus rounded the corner to find Tyler, Jake, and Brett surrounding a younger student, a thin freshman with thick glasses who looked terrified. The boy's backpack had been dumped out, his books and papers scattered across the floor. "Please," the freshman was saying, his voice shaking, "I already gave you my lunch money yesterday." "Yeah, but that was yesterday," Tyler replied with cruel amusement. "Today's a new day, which means new expenses. Hand it over, Four Eyes." Marcus stopped walking, his textbook clutched in his hand. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about Tyler Morrison being a predator who targeted anyone he perceived as weak. "Leave him alone." The words came out steadier than Marcus felt. All 4 boys turned to look at him, Tyler's face breaking into a delighted grin. "Well, well," Tyler said, stepping away from the freshman. "Look who finally grew a backbone. The silent treatment getting old, Rivera?" Marcus walked forward slowly, setting his textbook down on a nearby bench. "I said leave him alone. Pick on someone your own size." Tyler laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the lockers. "Someone my own size? Look around, Rivera. You are my size. Actually, you might even be smaller." He flexed his arms mockingly. 3 years of varsity football versus what? 0 years of anything useful. Jake and Brett flanked their leader, forming a semicircle around Marcus. The freshman had taken the opportunity to scramble away, gathering his scattered belongings and disappearing around the corner. At least the kid was safe. "Last chance, Rivera," Tyler said, cracking his knuckles. "Walk away now, and I'll only tell the whole school about how you ran away like a scared little girl. Stick around, and I'll have to teach you some manners the hard way." Marcus looked at each of the 3 boys, calculating distances and angles the way his martial arts instructors had taught him. Tyler was strong but slow, probably relying on his size to intimidate opponents. Jake was tall but had poor posture, suggesting weak core strength. Brett was muscular but kept shifting his weight nervously, indicating he was more follower than fighter. "I'm not walking away," Marcus said quietly. Tyler's grin widened. "Your funeral." He swung first, a wild haymaker aimed at Marcus's head. It was exactly the kind of undisciplined, telegraphed punch that Marcus had been trained to counter since he was 10 years old. Marcus ducked under the swing with fluid grace, stepping inside Tyler's guard and driving his elbow upward into the bigger boy's solar plexus. Tyler doubled over, gasping for air, and Marcus used the momentum to sweep his legs, sending him crashing to the floor. Jake reacted next, charging forward with more enthusiasm than skill. Marcus sidestepped, grabbed Jake's outstretched arm, and used a basic judo throw to send him flying into the lockers with a loud crash. Brett hesitated, looking between his fallen friends and Marcus, who stood calmly in the center of the hallway. "I don't want to hurt you," Marcus said, and he meant it. "But if you come at me, I will defend myself." Brett's courage evaporated. He turned and ran. Tyler was struggling to get back to his feet, his face red from lack of oxygen and embarrassment. Marcus waited patiently, hands at his sides, until Tyler was standing again. "That was lucky," Tyler gasped, trying to salvage his dignity. "You caught me off guard." "No," Marcus said simply. "I've been training in mixed martial arts for 8 years. I've won 12 tournaments and trained with some of the best coaches in 3 different states. What just happened wasn't luck. It was restraint." Tyler's eyes widened as the implications sank in. You've been faking it this whole time?" "I wasn't faking anything," Marcus replied. "I was choosing not to hurt you. There's a difference. But you crossed a line when you started targeting that freshman." Jake had pulled himself upright against the lockers, holding his shoulder where he had impacted. He stared at Marcus with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Why didn't you fight back before?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Because fighting should be the last resort, not the first. Because getting expelled or arrested would destroy my future and my mother's sacrifices. Because I hoped you would eventually get bored and move on to something else." Tyler straightened up, some of his bluster returning. "This isn't over, Rivera. You think you're tough now, but..." "It is over," Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying a quiet authority that hadn't been there before. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave me alone. You're going to leave that freshman alone. You're going to find something better to do with your time than picking on people you think can't fight back. And if we don't," Tyler challenged, though his voice lacked its previous confidence. Marcus stepped closer, and Tyler involuntarily stepped back. "Then you'll discover that what just happened was me being gentle. I stopped competing in tournaments because I was getting too good, too fast. My last opponent ended up in the hospital with a dislocated shoulder and a concussion. That was an accident during a controlled match with protective gear and referees." The threat hung in the air between them. Marcus picked up his textbook and started walking toward the exit, then paused and looked back. "For what it's worth, Tyler, you could probably be good at martial arts if you put in the work. You've got decent reflexes, and you're not afraid of physical confrontation. But you'd have to learn discipline first. And respect. Most good coaches won't train someone who uses their skills to bully others." Over the following week, the dynamics at Westfield High shifted dramatically. Word of the hallway confrontation spread quickly, though the details grew more exaggerated with each telling. Some versions had Marcus defeating 6 opponents instead of 3. Others claimed he had thrown Tyler through a window instead of just to the ground. Marcus found himself in the strange position of being simultaneously feared and respected. Students who had previously ignored him now nodded politely in the hallways. Some of the athletes approached him to ask about his training, genuinely curious about mixed martial arts. A few of the kids who had been Tyler's previous targets thanked him quietly for standing up to the bully. Tyler himself seemed genuinely shaken by the encounter. He still carried himself with swagger around his football teammates, but he gave Marcus a wide berth and no longer targeted the more vulnerable students. Jake had actually approached Marcus a few days later to apologize, explaining that he had mostly gone along with Tyler's bullying because he was afraid of becoming a target himself. The freshman Marcus had defended, a boy named David Kim, sought him out during lunch to offer his thanks. "Nobody's ever stood up for me like that before," David said shyly. "I know you didn't have to do anything." "Yes, I did," Marcus replied. "Maybe not legally, but morally. We all have an obligation to protect people who can't protect themselves." Coach Peterson had also heard about the incident and approached Marcus after gym class. "I hear you've got some martial arts background," the coach said carefully. "Any interest in helping out with our self-defense unit? Some of these kids could use proper instruction instead of learning from YouTube videos." Marcus agreed and found himself teaching basic defensive techniques to his classmates. It was satisfying in a way he hadn't expected, sharing knowledge instead of using it for violence. His mother noticed the change when he came home that evening. "You seem different," Elena Rivera observed, studying her son's face over dinner. "More confident." Marcus told her about the confrontation, watching her expression carefully. He expected disappointment or worry, but instead saw pride. "You did the right thing, mijo," she said softly. "I never wanted you to learn fighting so you could hurt people. I wanted you to learn it so you would never have to feel helpless. There's a difference between being a fighter and being a bully." "I know, Mom. You taught me that, and you remembered it when it mattered most. That's why I'm proud of you." The final piece of the puzzle came 2 weeks later, when Tyler Morrison approached Marcus after school. Marcus tensed, preparing for another confrontation, but Tyler's body language was different, less aggressive, more uncertain. "Rivera," Tyler said, stopping a few feet away. "Can we talk?" Marcus nodded, curious about what Tyler wanted to say. "I've been thinking about what you said, about martial arts training." Tyler seemed to struggle with the words. "Do you think... would you know any places around here that teach beginners?" It was the last thing Marcus had expected. "Why do you want to learn?" Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "Because you were right. About me using my size to push people around instead of actually getting good at something. And because..." He paused, looking embarrassed. "Because my little brother just started middle school and some 8th graders have been giving him trouble. I realized I don't actually know how to help him beyond just threatening the other kids, which isn't really helping." Marcus studied Tyler's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation, but the older boy seemed genuinely troubled and sincere. "There's a place downtown called Rivera's MMA. No relation to me, just coincidence," Marcus said slowly. "The instructor there is tough but fair. He won't train anyone who uses their skills to hurt innocent people, though. You'd have to prove you're serious about learning discipline, not just fighting techniques." Tyler nodded eagerly. "I understand. I know I messed up, Rivera. With you, with that freshman kid, with a lot of people. I can't take that back, but maybe I can do better going forward." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a loosening of tension he hadn't realized he was carrying. "It's Marcus," he said. "And yeah, I think Master Chen at Rivera's MMA would be willing to give you a chance. Tell him I sent you." Tyler's face broke into the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from him. "Thanks, Marcus. Really." As Tyler walked away, Marcus reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. He had come to Westfield High hoping to stay invisible and avoid trouble. Instead, he had discovered that sometimes the right kind of trouble, standing up for what's right even when it's difficult, could lead to something better than just hiding. He thought about the freshmen who no longer flinched when passing Tyler in the hallways, about Jake who had started eating lunch with some of the quieter kids instead of following Tyler around, about the other students who seemed to walk a little taller, knowing that someone was willing to stand up to bullies. Most importantly, Marcus thought about himself. For the first time in years, he felt like he belonged somewhere. Not because he had hidden who he was, but because he had finally been willing to show others who he really was. Someone with the strength to protect others and the wisdom to use that strength responsibly. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Working late tonight. There's leftover pasta in the fridge. Love you." Marcus smiled as he typed back, "Love you too, Mom. Thanks for everything." He meant it more than she would ever know. Thanks to her sacrifices and guidance, he had learned that true strength wasn't about dominating others or proving superiority. It was about having the power to help and choosing to use it wisely. As Marcus walked home through the tree-lined streets of his new town, he found himself hoping that his mother's job would stay stable for a while. For the first time in years, he was exactly where he wanted to be.